Steve Ballantyne from MVBC. This is the long-awaited brew day video. We're going to brew from a kit today on my stovetop, and we only have a couple of these left before we kind of make the switch to all grain brewing using my basement rig. So I thought, what better time than now to get started. So I wouldn't be doing you justice if we didn't go down the list of everything we need for a brew day. And again, this is an extract brew day, so if you're doing all grain, it's going to be quite a bit different. I've got everything lined up here that I'm going to need, I think. Sometimes you'll find me running to the other room because I forgot something. So, I need a kit. Today we're going to do a Russian Imperial Stout. This is a premium recipe, probably one of our favorites from Brewer's Best. And man, is it heavy. It's probably one of the most expensive kits they make because, holy cow, there's so much stuff in there. You'll see. We have a bucket, and this is a fermenting bucket. These run, $16 to $20 depending on where you buy it. Just be careful that when you buy it, it actually comes with a lid. A lot of these don't come with lids. You have to add it. So make sure you do that at checkout. There is a slight alteration with this bucket, which I'll show you later. If I'm going to do a high gravity beer like a Russian Imperial Stout, the first couple days there's a ton of blow off. I mean, crazy amounts of bubbles are going to come out of this sucker, and it's likely to flood or overflow my bubbler. So I'll have a bubbler that I stick in the end there. But yeah, this is a companion, and I'll throw up a picture there to kind of show you that. What I usually do is I just run a piece of tubing down into like a heavy glass that won't fall over, and I oftentimes run it right through the handle to kind of secure it, and that way you've got double blow off. And when you don't need it anymore, you can actually just turn this off and pull the plug out, and you can just keep your common bubbler in this hole here for the remainder of the fermentation. So it's handy and easy to drill these lids. I suggest you don't try to drill the Northern Brewer lids because it's like a harder plastic. These are a little more pliable and easier to drill holes through. The other ones kind of crack on you if you try it. But and these are only like $1 each, especially if you buy them in bulk. It's handy. A spigot. That's what we call it, a spigot. I've got a spray bottle. Spray bottle I'm going to use to tame my brew. It's really good to have one of these nearby when you're boiling your wort. Because at certain stages, like just as it's about to boil, you might get you'll see the wort rise up and foam up, and there's really 2 ways to control that. Well, 3 ways to control it if it starts bubbling over on you. One is to stir it. Another is to remove it from heat, or at least lower the heat. And then a third way is to just spray it with cool water. So that's just a 97-cent spray bottle filled with tap water to tame the beast if I need to. This is a wort chiller, and a lot of the homebrew kits that you buy don't come with this. You have to add it, and that's because by itself it's going to cost you anywhere from $40 to $70 some dollars, depending on the make of it. This one's a stainless steel. They make copper ones. I think they work just as well, so get the cheapest one you can find. And the other thing that makes them more expensive is the height. That sits right about to here in my kettle, which for the amount of wort that we're going to be making, that's just fine. But if you're doing, 10, 20 gallon brews, obviously you need a bigger chiller. These also come with little faucet adapters, so I just sort of laid that out to show you that, at some point in this process, I'm going to have to unscrew this fitting on my faucet, which I keep very loose, so I can just turn it by hand. And I'll turn in that adapter so that I can hook this to the faucet. This is a hydrometer. At the end of our process, when our wort is chilled, I'm going to pull out that hydrometer and drop it into my wort, and we're going to check it. There's always 2 readings that we'll do, and when we get to the instruction sheet, we'll show you those readings. Pair of scissors. Any scissors will do. These are stainless kitchen scissors, and these are great because I'm going to soak them in sanitizer. That should go at the bottom of your sanitation bucket, because you're going to use that to cut open your yeast pouch. And your yeast pouch itself also goes in your sanitized bucket. So we need a kettle, and I have one. So kind of small. This is perfect for a 5-gallon batch. For any more, you need a bigger kettle. It's also really cheap, really thin, but I've been using this thing for years, and it came from Northern Brewer. It was part of a kit. I'm still using it today. Also with the kit, I got a big spoon. You'll need that. We're going to need that both to stir our wort at the beginning of the process. At the very end of the process, we're going to get down into the bucket, and we're going to have to stir our yeast into the wort. And that's why the handle's so long on this. You really got to get it, it's got to be taller than the bucket that you're using. So, handy to have, and it comes with your kits. This did not come with our kits. This is it's a thermometer. So this is like a cooking thermometer. It's sharp and pointy on the end, so I could drive that into a steak if I wanted to. But it's also really long, that's why I like it. It just sort of hangs down into my kettle. So you can actually drill a hole in your kettle and buy a brew thermometer that actually goes right into the bottom of your kettle through a hole. But I found this works just as well, and this was, $2, $3. A brew thermometer might run you $20, so not a huge investment. This is powdered brew wash. PBW, all sorts of names for this. Some people just call it, Santa Star, which is actually like a brand. But this stuff is just a powdered stuff that you add water to, and you stir it up. And it's a no-rinse sanitizer. So don't rinse it off. Actually, it says right there, easy rinsing. But yeah, when you're bottling, you actually soak your bottles in this, and you just shake the stuff out. You do not rinse them after. So this is food-safe stuff. It's going to kill everything that might come in contact with yeast and make your beer taste like poop. It'll kill all that bad bacteria, but it's perfectly safe for human consumption, and it doesn't itself have any taste if it should get into your beers, so that's good. This is a bottling bucket. This actually came as part of the kit, and doesn't come with a lid, because if you're bottling, you're not going to put a lid on this. The other thing that makes this bucket a bottling bucket is it has a spigot down there at the bottom there. We're about ready to get started. We'll go down some instructions, and I'm just going to take you through the whole process kind of in the order that I do things. So, did I mention I have a beer? Anytime you're brewing, you should have a beer ready. And this should be a beer that you brewed yourself, right? So yeah, I'm drinking out of a Zaftig glass. But this is actually, I think, an appropriate one. It's our Quarantine Whiskey Barrel Stout, which our kids aptly named Quarantina after my wife Tina. So yeah, that's our Quarantina Whiskey Bourbon Barrel Stout. It's really good stuff. All right, so let's get started. Time to bust open that kit. It's got that new kit smell. Yes, smell the grain in there. So I've done an unboxing kit before, but here's what you get inside. Advertising, more advertising, instruction sheet, and my instruction sheets, actually, I like to put them right here in the fridge, and we'll make notes on that as we go through the process. There we go. Got my pencil handy. Keep that right on top of the fridge there. And first thing we should do is write the brew day on there. So I think it's the 25th. I'm going to scribble that on there. Ooh, that's scribbles. My goodness. And then down here, this is actually our brew day schedule. This beer is actually really easy. If I turn back a page to one that we did yesterday, there's actually 3 different hop additions, including a spice pack at the end there. This one's actually really easy because all you're adding is 1 ounce of hops at the beginning of the boil and nothing else. Just boil for 60 minutes. So really easy brew schedule, but still, you should always date it. There's always this empty spot down here at the bottom where they just didn't need to write anything. I like to use this to actually give your beer a unique name. We've brewed so many Russian Imperial Stouts that, I like to name them something special. Not sure what that is going to be yet. But as you go through the instructions here, first step is sanitize. Have to sanitize all your utensils, anything that will come in contact with your finished product. And they give you some ideas of how you might do that. Before we do that, though, I'm going to fill my kettle because the bottling bucket is a really handy guy for measurements. There's our markings down the side. So we're going to need about 2.5 gallons of water, and I believe that's right there. 2.5 gallons of water, so we're going to fill our bucket up to there. And, I could use my fermentation bucket for this, but you notice it's a hard, non-translucent kind of plastic. This guy can see right through it. So I probably wouldn't want to ferment in this, but again, it's a bottling bucket, and it's great for measurements. So we're going to fill right up to that line or so. Doesn't have to be perfect. And we're going to dump it into this kettle. Before I start pouring water, make sure that thing's in the off position. Don't want to make that mistake again. Alright, and thankfully, I've got this handy dandy sprayer, and I'm actually going to use hot tap water. And let me turn it around so I can see when I hit 2.5 gallons there. There's a lot to be said about water quality. Some people actually go out and buy big tanks of bottled water, or they'll do the reverse osmosis water from the grocery store. There's really no reason you have to do that. Here in Ohio, we actually have pretty good water quality. If you're living somewhere else, I don't want to call anybody out, but maybe your water quality is not so great, then you might consider it. But generally they say if your water is good to drink, then it's going to make good beer. And our water is perfectly good to drink, so no special filters needed. So again, we're going to get that to about the 2.5 gallon mark. And doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, with a heavy beer, sometimes they say if you can boil more water easily, then add more water. You know, by all means, go up to like 4 gallons if you want. I'm not going to do that because my kettle is just not big enough to handle that. So, all right, turn that water off, and I'm going to put that on the stove and dump my water in. All right, water is in the kettle. I had to cut that part out because I can't pour 2.5 gallons of water one-handed. Haha. Next thing we're going to do, though, now that our water's in our kettle, we're going to go right back and use this bucket again. So we're going to turn it around there. We're only going to put 1 gallon of water in this time. And before we do that, we're going to add a little bit of sanitizer. So this stuff, I think they generally put the mixing on the side, or they give you some idea how much you should use. This stuff is 1 tablespoon per gallon of water. So one item I did not have ready that I will need is this guy, a tablespoon. So you can get a nice level scoop of that, pour it in there. All right, put the lid back on before I knock it over and spill it everywhere. Okay, and I'm going to add 1 gallon of water to that, and I'm going to use my sprayer because it dissipates this stuff. Right. Now, it doesn't have to be hot water. In fact, I'll switch that to cold because I got to stick my hands in this later. Going to 1 gallon. It's about right. Yeah. All right. Now this is just going to come right over here, and it's going to sit there the entire time that we're doing everything else. So they say in your instructions that you have to sanitize all your instruments. Not necessarily true. I mean, I usually use this to stir my solution up, make sure that it's all broken down and well mixed. But this doesn't really have to be sanitized because it's going to be part of our boil process. So I'm going to put it right there. Yeah, some of these handles on these pots are actually designed to hold your spoon and maybe even the lid. This one is not. See that? Doesn't work. And my spoon just barely sits there. But yeah, you can actually buy these to where you know, they're a little more finely manufactured and everything fits together like pie. But yeah, we're gonna set that right there for now. So we have to get some things sanitized. One of those is a bubbler. Forgot to mention this in things you need. And again, this usually comes with kits, or you can add one to your fermenter bucket when you buy that. This is a really simple 99-cent El Cheapo bubbler. Don't need anything fancy. Kind of works like a water pipe, excuse the term. It's two-sided. It basically lets the air escape, but no air may enter because it's going to have water on both sides of here. So bubbles can come out. Bad oxygen and other stuff can't get in. And this one, very simple. It just has like a little plastic cap that pops off. And we're just going to put the whole thing in there and just sort of let it sink. And you only really need 2 to 3 minutes of contact time for that to sanitize, but we're going to leave it in there for the entire time we're brewing. I'm going to use these scissors. Scissors will eventually go in there too, but I'm going to need them to cut open my grain bags. I'll just set those right there. Yeast. Check our yeast date. We always check our yeast date. This expires 5 of 2021. That's a year from now. So the yeast is good. I'm going to throw that in there, the whole pouch. And then we can start getting the rest of our ingredients out. So let's do that. I got a sock. Grain sock's going to go right here. Oh, I forgot the step of throwing away this stuff. Don't need the marketing materials. Trash. Okay. Bottle caps. Don't need those for a long time because this has to ferment the whole thing. Priming sugar. That's part of the bottling process. So that goes right over here. Maltodextrin. That's actually going to go right into our wort before we boil it. Grain, obviously, is going to go into this grain bag. So I'll keep those by the sink here so I don't make too big of a mess. Pellets, hop pellets that is. Notice we got 2 pouches, and as I mentioned in my extract kit video, sometimes they combine these into one bag, sometimes you get 2 bags. Sometimes they put them in separate bags even though it's the same hops. They'll give you 2 pouches because they go in at different timings. You know, one may go in at the beginning, one may go in at the end. So when you get 2 bags like this, that's when you like to go back to your instructions and say, why'd they give me 2 bags? In this case, add both packs of 1 ounce hops. So this is basically a 2 ounce recipe with 2 1 ounce bags. And that's fine. That's probably just to save them some money in packaging. So we also have dark malt and more dark malt. And again, why 2 bags? In this case, just packaging. Put those there. And we've got these 2 cans. So this is liquid malt extract. And uh-oh, got a dent back there. Hoo-hoo. Yeah. So we're going to put that right there. And I'll put that right there. And I'm actually going to put those into a pot and fill it with hot water and just keep these things warmed up. So this stuff is like, gosh, it's like tar coming out. Really hard to get out of a can. So they usually recommend that you let it sit in hot water, and we are going to do that because it really speeds up the process. Before I get too carried away, I should probably get my water heated up. We're going to be steeping our grain. So I'm going to set that right around 3 to 4 on my stove there. And we want to get this temperature up right around 155 to 158 degrees. That's perfect for grain steeping. And same way you would like steep a tea bag. That's kind of what we're doing. We're going to put our grain in one of these sacks, and then we're going to pop it into our kettle, and we're just going to let it swim around and seep, and we're just going to basically let that water get to every part of that grain. You don't want dough balls, or you don't want lumps to where the water is not going to get. Which is kind of impossible when it's all in one bag. So if you have a lot of grain, like this isn't a whole lot of grain, but you are pushing the boundaries of what you can put in one of these little bags, because the center is probably not going to get the same attention that the outer grain does once it's all lumped in here. But hey, we do what we can, right? So if you have an extra one of these, use it. I'm going to not use it because I'm trying to keep it honest here as to using the kit the way it was intended. So got that warming up, and while that's warming up, let's go ahead and get these guys in water. So I got these guys in water. The labels have already started coming apart. That really sucks because these become slippery, and I'm eventually just going to pull them labels off. I almost wish they wouldn't put those big paper labels on there because a lot of people soak these in water, and it just becomes a mess. But anyway, I digress. So I'm going to put the stove on back there, and I'm going to set it very low. So low that if I open this door, I'm probably going to blow out my flame. But we're not trying to heat these. We're not trying to make them explode. And if you got these hot enough, they probably would blow. I've left them on and gotten a little too hot, and the tops actually, become excaved, and that's probably not good. So yeah, we're just going to let them sit. And every once in a while, I'm going to flip them over just to uniformly heat that entire can of liquid malt extract. So, all right, while that's going, I'm just going to check my heat. Looks good. And while this guy's heating up, I can get my grain into my grain bag. So this part's going to be a little difficult to do. I need both my hands, and my helper's still working. So this is where I call her in, and we work on this together. And this is definitely easier with 2 people, trust me. I got to stretch my sock out here, and I got to get all this grain into the bag. Or in this case, all that grain into the bag. So I kept my scissors handy. I'm just going to zipper off the top half of this without spilling it. Alright, so I got my grain in hand, and I got my pouch kind of stretched out right, and I'm just going to start pouring. Now, you'll notice I'm doing this over the sink, and there's a reason for that, because, I don't know if you can see this, but all that grain dust is just going to start going out everywhere. And this stuff's really sticky, surprisingly sticky as soon as it gets wet. So just do it over the sink, and you just spray it out when you're done. Another thing that happens here is you see the grain just wants to fill it like a tube sock. And if you bounce this off the bottom of the sink there, look at that. Compacts it for you. So I'm going to go ahead and cut open my second bag of grain here. Again, try to do this one-handed if I can. There. Now that's probably the last time I'm going to need these scissors. Well, that's not true. I got some bags over there, so just keep moving my scissors around. Eventually they'll end up in my bucket. So, notice I haven't finished pouring all my black barley, and I've already switched off to my Munich. Man, does that smell good. I like to kind of mix my grain a little bit, because again, the center of your grain is probably going to get stuck. That's just the nature of the beast. You're not going to get water through all of this. So, it does pay to switch off and kind of mix your grain in the bag here. Make sure you get all them flavors. Alright, boy, this is going to be one big lump of grain, I tell you. Alright, get the rest of my Cara Munich in there. That stuff smells fantastic. This stuff, I've mentioned this in another video, but the black barley is more of a chocolatey kind of tasting grain, and it makes the best dog treats. Yeah, because dogs really think they're eating chocolate when they taste this stuff. And, you know, chocolate's something they can't normally have, so... Alright, so that's my big ball. Look at that sucker. That's probably too much to put in one sock. But another thing I'll show you is, look at my hand now. So this is, I won't show you what happens when I get it wet, but suffice to say, it's sticky. And that's why I did it in the sink. Now, you're supposed to tie a knot in this. You don't tie the knot down here, because this bag swells. You want to tie the knot at least here. I tie it all the way up around the top somewhere because it makes it easy to handle your grain bag. You can kind of swing it around. This gives you something to grab onto. I can tie this into the handles of my kettle to keep it in one spot. It's just handy. So now that's ready. I'm going to leave it right back in the sink there. And we are at 125 degrees or so, so we're not quite ready for steeping, but we're getting there. This is definitely like the not fun part of brewing, which is there's just a lot of waiting. So this is typically when we put some music on, and my co-host, who again is still at work, she should be home soon though. She usually plays some really good music for me. She'll put on a record, or will agree to have this little guy, I can't say her name. I'll have her play some music for us, which is nice. Yeah, it's a waiting game. So I just kind of look around. Sometimes I go back to my instructions and make sure I'm doing everything right. You know, where am I now? Steeping grains. Okay, so we're right on schedule, we're right on track, and we're just waiting. And while we're waiting, maybe I'll make sure my flame didn't blow out. Looks good. I'm going to flip these over. Make sure they're not getting too hot. Nope, so far so good. In fact, they can take a little more heat than that, so I'll turn that up just a little bit. But yeah, again, the reason we do that is to lighten this stuff up, get it runny, and get it easier to put into a kettle. And also, good time to check your dates. I've actually used expired stuff before, and it still tasted fine. But yeah, that stuff's good. So where are we at? Ooh, getting there. So maybe turn my heat up, maybe stir it around. Since my temperature probe is probably not the most reliable, stir that around, might see the temperature move up a little bit. So trying to get it around 155, 158. You do not want to get to 170. Once you reach 170 and plus, that's where your grain starts to extract some oils, and you're going to get flavors in your beer that you did not want, you didn't intend for. So we only really, we're interested in, there's all science to this, but let's just say, to keep things simple, we want the sugars. We want those good sugars out of the grain and nothing else. So, all right, now the waiting begins. While we wait for water to heat up, I'd also like to mention this process that we're going to do. When that reaches steeping temperatures, I'm going to drop my bag in. I'm going to reduce my temperature so that I don't go overboard. I'm going to put a lid on. This is the only time, by the way, that you're ever going to use a lid, because you certainly don't want to boil with the lid on. So you only really use this for steeping, and I'll put it back on when I clean it up and put it away, I guess. But it's only really used for that 20 minutes of the stage there. Also, I've prepared some twine. So at the end of this process, I have to pick up my bag and hold my bag over my kettle and just let the water run out of it. And at that point, you've got wort. Technically, it's wort. Just part of the beer. Basically, unfermented beer, it's just wort. But when we're letting that drip, it's kind of hard to stand here and just hold the stupid bag. And it's going to drip for a good 5-10 minutes. And you don't want to cut that process short. You want to make sure you get all the good stuff out of the grain. So I usually just tie it up. And I'm lucky that I've got like a cabinet door that I can kind of pull out and use my range hood for a little bit of leverage. And I'm just going to dangle it right over the pot and let it drip out. So I got a little piece of cooking twine. And when I'm done, I can either throw the whole thing away, bag, twine and all. I could actually empty out the grain bag and reuse it someday. I've done that before, but they're so cheap, you may as well just throw it away. And I could also take that grain and make dog cookies. Not a bad idea either. So anyhow, how are we looking? Almost there. Okay, that's enough waiting. So we're right about on temperature. I actually got a little more than 155 because when you drop your grain bag in there, the temperature is going to drop just slightly. So now we're going to drop our bag in there. And I like to do this little kind of dip and move. Dip it in there and I kind of pull it back up. And I dip it in there and I kind of pull it back up. And what I'm doing is I'm rinsing the grain. I'm trying to get that water really in their grain bag. And that's a lot of grain. That's going to swell to a pretty impressive size after we're done with our spent grain. But yeah, if I pick it up, let the water run out, drop it back in there again, I'm just doing the work of the process, right? So you don't want to do that too much. We're actually supposed to put it in there and kind of leave it undisturbed for a while. I like to try to take it for a swim, so to speak. Just get all that, make sure that grain is all getting watered down, getting the attention it needs. And then remember I tied that knot way up here? That's because I like to just sort of stick it in the handle and keep it out of there, so it doesn't fall in there. And then make sure it doesn't fall into my burner. That would be bad. And I want to maintain temperature, so we got to keep it around that temperature, but at the same time we don't want to overheat it. So that's where I turn this down real low, like practically off. In fact, it doesn't actually hurt to turn it all the way off, and then just check it and make sure that you're maintaining the temp. So I'm going to put the lid on now because this is, again, one part you need a lid. And boy, it's great having one of these overhead fans. It's actually starting to get a little steamy in here. So I'm going to put my fan on low and just start sucking some of that vapor out of the room here. Not that it smells bad. I love the smell of grain steeping. It's great. So we're going to leave that alone for a while and just let the grain do what it does. So I'm supposed to set a timer. I got to yapping. You should do that for about 20 minutes. So we'll set a timer for 19 minutes and we'll go to next steps. It's been about 5 minutes there. So this is a good time to remind you that you should be flipping your cans every once in a while. as they sit in hot water. And yeah, it's getting more like it. So this stuff, I could shake it around and kind of feel it lightening up on me, make my life easier. While that's happening too, I got the can opener out, so I'm going to have to cut the lid off of these guys. I cleaned up my grain mess just with the sprayer, and boy, that was easy since I did it in the sink. And but yeah, every once in a while I like to, I learned this from watching other people on YouTube videos. You know, they'll take their grain for a swim. I kind of like that. You know, they just sort of drag it around the pot. Because we just want to make sure there's no dough balls. You know, if we were doing an all grain brew, we'd just have a big, either a bag, we'd be doing this in a bag, or we'd actually just have the grain in the kettle, and then we'd have a little spigot down here, and we'd have to be careful to keep the grain in the kettle as we drain the wort out at the end of the process. But this, I mean, this makes things really easy. This is very similar to what you'd call brew in a bag. A brew bag is just, it covers the whole kettle. So my whole kettle would be lined in a bag, and I could do an all grain brew. But then when I'm done, when I've got all the good sugars extracted, I'll just grab the bag and take the whole bag out, grain and all. And then when it comes time to drain the wort out of your kettle, you're not going to have stuck grain in it because it comes out the bag. So pretty cool stuff. Yeah, this is as simple as it gets in the brewing process. Is we just got a big bag of grain and we're just letting her soak, letting it take a swim. And I don't know, I might take some hits on this in comments, but I like to occasionally pick the bag up and just let it drain. You know, it doesn't have to drain completely, but I feel like every time I do that, now when I dunk it back in there, that water is getting into the top of the grain again. So here, like I can make it do backflips. Good boy. Look at that. So yeah, I like dragging it around. The one thing you won't see me do, and they tell you don't ever do this, is you do not squeeze it. When we're all done with this, we're going to let it drain out, but we wouldn't dare squeeze the bag. If you smash your grain, crush your grain, squeeze your grain, that you're definitely getting some off flavors in your beer that you do not want. So do not do that. All right, so still 13 minutes. I'll flip these again and yeah, put the lid back on. Oh, another thing, I want to make sure I'm maintaining my temperature here. So I'm going to put that in there and try not to strike my grain bag. That would be bad. Don't want to bust it open. So the temperature's starting to drop slightly. Getting closer to 150. 150 and a half. So I'll probably put the burner back on, but keep it on low. Just to kind of bring that temp up just slightly. And we'll put the lid back on too. Got about 7 minutes left on the clock. I had to set up a prop so I can get a good vantage point here. So still just going back, taking my grain bag for a swim, making sure my temperature's on point. I actually kicked my burner back on to low, so I'm going to check my temperature again. This is the point at which I usually get it too hot and screw things up. And I've actually made beer that I got the grain too hot in the process, and you can taste it. It's not pleasant. I mean, it still makes drinkable beer, but it's not good beer. Especially this kind of recipe, we don't want to do that. This is going to be like a very sweet, dark beer, and you'll definitely notice those off flavors. So temperature's right back about where I want it again, right a little past, right around 158. That's pretty good. That's perfect temp right now. So I'm going to turn my burner off, put my lid back on, and kind of keep things contained. And got about 5 to 6 minutes left on the clock. So continue our dance party. So I've been flipping these things back and forth, and they're getting pretty hot. I'm probably just going to turn that back down to very low again. And while we're waiting, while we got time to blow, I'm going to start peeling this label off. It got wet. It's pretty gross. I just dropped a big slab of it. So yeah, this is a good time to get the label out of here. Just peel off as much as you want just to get out of your way. And this stuff becomes slippery. So I'm going to have to pour this into the pot. I don't want the can slipping out of my hands. That's the only reason I'm doing it. So I'll flip them one last time and just sort of skin the cans in the process. So that's what you see going on here. Yeah. Boy, if anybody from Brewer's Best is watching this, stop labeling these cans. It's unnecessary. All right, put that in there. And about 4 minutes left. We got 2 minutes left on the clock. So I'm going to do my last couple rounds of the soaking game. That is, I'm going to pick that up and drop it a couple times. Again, never squeezing the bag, but still making sure that we're getting water in every part of this this big ball of grain here. And it's kind of fun to do this. You can actually watch the water levels kind of sink down through there. And gravity just sort of does the work for you. You know, it's drawing and pulling that wort down towards the bottom of the bag. And it just sort of runs out in that nice, beautiful, thick molasses color. And we're just going to drop her gently back in there. Kind of take it for a swim. Another trick that I like to use is I'll kind of pull the bag over to one side of the kettle, and then I'll just sort of whirlpool my water back and forth with my spoon here. So yeah, we're just trying to get that grain as rinsed as we can in this process. And well, that's going. These cans are actually getting pretty hot. I've been flipping them every once in a while. I'm going to go ahead and turn that burner off. We'll just dump that water out here momentarily, but I'll still let them sit in there until we're actually ready to dump them into this kettle. So they can stay warm in that bucket of hot water here. And yeah, we're about ready for the next step. Tried to change my vantage point slightly here so you can see the ridiculous thing I'm about to do. I'm going to kind of abuse my kitchen cabinet and my overhead here. So that sound means it's been 20 minutes. So I'm going to flip these cans one more time while I'm thinking about it. And we're ready to bring the grain bag out. So there's actually different contraptions. I've actually seen things sold which just hold your grain bag over a kettle. It's like a hook on a kind of a weighted anchored bottom. But I found something that works even better than that. So I'm going to spin my bag around one more time. I'm going to throw this lid down here in the sink because that's the last time we'll use it in this entire process. Just that steeping part. I'm going to get some twine here. And I'm going to tighten a knot around the other knot. It's a terrible Boy Scout. That'll work. I'm going to pull this out just slightly. And I'm going to pull my bag up. And I'm actually going to tilt my kettle over this way a little bit, make this work a little easier. And I'm just going to hoist her up. So I've actually seen professional nano breweries that brew in a bag, and this is how they do it. They got a big hoist, and they take this, 50, 100, 200 pound grain bags, and they got a winch, and they just flip the switch, and the winch just pulls it up in the air, and we just let everything run out. So it's kind of fun. You're doing that same process, just on a much smaller scale, obviously. And then I can wrap this twine around, and this is that nasty, hairy cooking twine that kind of sticks to itself. And so we can kind of just loop it around a couple times, and it's going to just hang there. And there we go. Now, they do mention in the instructions that this is wort. This is officially wort now. And we obviously have a lot more work to do to make it complete. But this is now grain juice. So if I hold this up and kind of tilt it out there, you can see that dark chocolatey color. That's just from this grain bag. And I'd say we did pretty good. So another thing we'll say about grain, this is specialty grain. What makes it special? Well, it's just, if we just made beer with these cans of liquid malt extract, it's going to be pretty bland. It's all going to taste the same. So this just gives the beer that special character that in this case makes it a Russian Imperial Stout. So next step's going to be adding these cans of liquid to your wort to thicken her up. We got to get all of this, both cans in there. We got to get both bags of dry malt extract in there. And we got to get a bag of maltodextrin in there. This stuff's super powdery. Maltodextrin actually likes to lump up, which really stinks. So you got to pour and stir, pour and stir. This stuff's more or less the same way. The liquid is liquid. I like to get the liquid in there first because I feel like I've got a better chance of this stuff. I you got a better chance of this stuff mixing easily, put it that way. You'll see. So, I got my can opener ready. I'm going to open these cans. I'm going to start pouring. Got my first can open. Look at that. Look at that delicious stuff. Looks like chocolate syrup. So, this is probably bad. I might burn my thumbs, but I like to get the lid in there and kind of get that stuff that's stuck to the lid off of there. Anything you leave behind is going in the trash, so you want to get as much of this stuff out of the can and into your kettle as you possibly can. And there, like I did pretty good. So, next thing I'll do is turn my heat up. So, they tell you, do not put this in here with the heat running. I'm going to disobey direct orders because I want to get my boil going. It's going to take forever to boil 2.5 some gallons of water. We actually lost a little bit of water here, so it's more like 2 solid gallons. But it's still going to take a while to boil that. And so I'm going to put my heat on high, and I'm just going to work. I'm pouring, and I'm stirring. And I'm kind of making figure eights. So, this is a good time to talk about viscosity. You know, like motor oil. Wort. You want wort to boil, and it's kind of a thinner substance. Thicker substances do well or better with a welled up amount of stainless steel at the bottom. So, most pots have a thick bottom on them. Brew pots, or brew kettles, have very thin bottoms. And I've seen some manufacturers kind of advertise or brag that they've got thicker bottoms on their kettles. Well, that's just because they weren't made for brewing. You actually want a thin bottom. This liquid will boil easier, and you have less chance of scorching if the bottom is thinner. So, I've heard it explained with spaghetti sauce. You put spaghetti sauce in a pot, kick the heat on, it wants to bubble, it wants to pop out, it wants to make your stove into a mess. Wort's going to be the same way the thicker it gets. Alright, I've gotten about all I can pour out of there, but there's still a lot left in the can. I don't want to drip on the floor. This stuff is so sticky. I mean, you would not believe how sticky this stuff is. So I don't want to get on the floor, but I do want to get as much of this out of the can as I possibly can pull out of there. So I'm going into the bottom with my spoon and I'm just pulling it out. And always stirring. Always be stirring. We do not want this to scorch. Your beer will taste like crap. Also, here's something you shouldn't do. Don't try this at home, kids. I saw another guy do this and I thought, he must be some sort of genius. And then I just about burnt the bottom of my hands. But it doesn't hurt to actually throw some hot water in there out of your kettle. Swirl it around. Drop it back in there. Repeat the process. Because that hot water really loosens it up and makes it easier to get the stuff out. Pretty soon your can's going to start to look a little white inside. You're going to see that lining, and you'll know that you've pretty much done all you can to get all that out of there. Oh yeah. And I've already dripped on the floor. Uh-oh. I'm going to try not to step there until I clean it up. It's sticky. Okay. Notice my grain bag's still hanging here, getting kicked around, still dripping out. I let that hang there till the last possible minute because I want to get every drop of that good green juice. And it's pretty much stopped dripping. I can probably remove it now, but it's not really in my way. So that's only one can. I got to get the next can. I'm going to do the same process. Okay, so in goes the second can. Same process. Pour and stir. Pour and stir. When I crack open the can, there's this nice, satisfying, like opening a soft drink, because you know the stuff is kind of heated and under pressure. All right. Whew. Get that yes. Like I said, it's like molasses. Yeah, got a little curly there. Nasty. So, make things easier. Certainly doesn't hurt to add water into the can. Ooh, I missed. Stir it around a little bit. Swish, swish, swish. And we pour. And we sort of repeat that. Same as we did before. And again, I got my temperature going on high here, so I'm going to get a boil going. And really, I want to get all my ingredients in here before I hit boil. So far we're on target. Yeah, that's pretty good. Not bad for 1 or 2 passes here. This can had a dent in it, and of course, stuff's starting to get stuck down there under the dent in the can. I hate that. And now I got it all over my hands. It's nice and sticky. Getting all over my kettle. Oops. Alright, so at this point, we are done with our grain bag. There's really nothing more dripping out of it at this point. So I'm going to toss my cans, toss the grain bag, and make sure everything is very well stirred up. And then we'll start adding our powdered stuff. We got maltodextrin and dried malt extract we'll be adding. Alright, I'm going to start with the toughest, which is the maltodextrin. This is the most likely to get stuck on me. I'm kind of forming the little sugar balls. So I'm just going to very slowly dump a little bit at a time. And it's already starting to ball up on me. You're going to get like these little nuggets. And don't be too worried about that. When this thing hits full boil, there's no way these lumps are going to stay intact. So what you should worry about though is if these hit the bottom of your kettle where the heat is applied at full blast right now, there's no doubt that those are going to burn to the bottom. So then you're going to get a scorchy taste in your beer. It's going to taste terrible. And God help you when you try to clean this kettle out. So yeah, just stir it. Just stir it. And if it starts to look too lumpy, you can kind of take your ladle and kind of smash the lumps against the side of the kettle, and they'll disappear. I've added as much as a pound and a half, I think, of maltodextrin to some brews, and it's maddening. It's really like it's a lot of sugar to deal with at one sitting at one point. So, all right, so I'm just stirring that in. I'll pitch that bag, and I'm going to go straight on to the dark sprayed dried malt. So what's the difference between a dried malt extract and a liquid malt extract? Less water added. That's it. Alright, so I'm going to start pouring. I'm going to kind of do this in just little amounts here. And I'm just doing figure eights in my kettle. Sometimes I go around the edges because those little corner edges of the bottom of your kettle tend to creep up on you. Yeah, this stuff actually stirs really easy, especially in near boiling water. And that's why I turn my heat up. A lot of times I tell you, remove it from heat, add all this stuff, stir it together, then put it back on heat. And if you ask me, you're wasting time doing that, and you're also making it harder on yourself. This is much easier to stir into near boiling water. And I can kind of tell by the looks of this. I'll bring the camera around and show you, but I can kind of tell we are definitely approaching the boil point, which is great. Nothing like waiting on your work to boil. Yeah, you'll see me scooping at the edge of the bag there. This stuff likes to, as the steam rises, it gets stuck. It turns into little balls and wants to stay in the bag. You got to kind of scrape it out of there. All right, one more bag, and that will be a complete wort process. Oh yeah. Pour and stir. And I'm just watching this stuff disappear. Let's give you a look, huh? Definitely need a third hand for this, but look at that. So you can see that there's some little lumps. See those little lumps there? We just want to make sure all those disappear. And one of the reasons I do figure eights is I'm just scooping and scraping, and I'm just hitting every corner edge of that bottom of that kettle, because I do not want any of this to accumulate there. That would be very bad. So I'm just going to keep dumping and stirring. If you have an assistant, this is a good time to use them. You can have them pour and you stir. And if it starts looking too lumpy, you can go, "Ho!" and make them stop for a moment, just so you can catch up. Yeah, that's looking really good. I'm gonna dump the rest in there so I can work fast. And look, get a little dough ball at the edge there, see that? Yeah. So you can kind of use the handle, or you can use the end of your spoon to get the rest of that off of there. This is where most of the flavor of your beer is going to come from, is the grain bag. So you want to make sure you rinsed the grain bag very well. And the other part of the flavor comes from this stuff. So yeah, we're getting there. This is going to be boiling soon. So we're just going to keep stirring, wait for the boil to happen. We are waiting for our wort to boil. So our wort is now complete. All of our liquid is in there. Our grain bag was rinsed, of course. All our dried stuff is in there. And now we've got a really nice, thick, black molasses. Look at that. And it smells really good. Really good. This is a good time to kick the fan up on my overhead here. Might get a little harder to hear me. But once this gets boiling, you've got to have really good ventilation. And this one actually carries outside, which we installed just a couple months ago there, and it's fantastic. So this is a good time to clean up some of your mess. We are now done with the scissors, so I don't need those until the very end of the process when I cut my yeast pouch open. So I'm actually going to drop my scissors in there so they get sanitized. I'm also done with my temperature gauge, my thermometer for now, but I'm going to need it at the very end of the process. So I'm going to just sort of set it over here next to the sink. I got my rag going in here with some dish detergent so I can kind of keep things clean over here. This is probably the hottest you're ever going to get your stovetop. And I don't know if you can hear that or see that, but my God, it gets hot right around here. In fact, I could potentially damage my countertop here because it gets very hot. So sometimes I just sort of lay a wet rag over there, you know, just kind of keep it out of my burner. I've seen people put like cookie sheets in there to deflect the heat, but I like to keep a rag handy because, especially when I like to take my spoon and sort of set it here, and then it drips down to there, and then you just sort of take a rag and wipe it. See that? Nice. But yeah, at this point we're waiting for it to boil. And I would say you're safe to step back from the kettle and maybe clean things up, but do not leave this thing unmonitored. This is a bad time for a bathroom break, or go check on laundry, or, you know, don't get too far away, because you see that foam forming on top? So we're going to hit a part of the process that I've seen referred to as like the hot break, where just before you hit a rolling boil, this stuff will rise. I mean, it will rise right up to the top of the kettle, maybe even over the top of the kettle. And you want to talk a mess. My God, you'll never get the smell or the mess out of your stove. So just don't let it happen. Just be ready. So a couple different ways. I think I mentioned this earlier in the video. A couple different ways to stop this from boiling over. One is you just stir it. You stir this foam right back into the beer. Another way is to turn the heat off, or slide this thing over off the stove. You know, try to get it away from the heat. And by the way, those handles are going to be really hot if this thing's boiling. So have some pot holders ready. The third method is to just get a spray bottle, fill it with cold tap water, and you just spray. See how that foam just sort of disappears on you there? So this is like the anti-foamer, like magic. So, but yeah, look, it comes right back. So we're just going to continue to stir. I'm going to not cheat. This is the point at which you do a lot of waiting. You know, you're just waiting for it to boil. I've got like an old deep fryer element that I can toss in here and plug into the outlet. So yeah, if you've got any methods of cheating to heat stuff up faster, by all means use it. But playing it straight. I'm not cheating. I'm just going to wait for this to boil. So we'll just keep stirring, keep doing our figure eights, and avoid a boil over. Oh, look at that. What you're seeing is a rapid boiling coming to the surface. So I'm going to stir, 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 stir. Always trying to stir in the foamy head there. I don't want that creeping up, coming back on me. Another interesting thing, I mentioned that, you know, some of these kettles come with handles that are shaped to hold the spoon, and this one does not. That'll fall right off of there. But the further we get in the process, the stickier the handle gets, and the easier it is to land the handle there. It stays there pretty good. And I gotta tell you, it's not bad washing that off too. That scrubs off real easy. But the longer you're brewing here, the easier it gets for the handle to stay where it's supposed to, or the easier it is to get the spoon to stay where it's supposed to stay. So that's kind of fun. So we are almost to a rapid boil. Just going to keep stirring, spraying if we have to, and we're going to keep a very close eye on this. Folks, we are boiling. For real. So let's go back to our sheet here. What's our brew day schedule? Add hops. Both packs of 1 ounce hops and boil for 60 minutes. So we're going to put both bags of these in here, and then we're going to set a timer for 60 minutes. 1 bag at a time here. I'm going to empty that out. Smell good. Make sure everything's out of there. Yep, that's empty. Whoa, look at it. Look at it creeping up on me. See that? So there's this interesting process where those oils hit your wort. And also, this stuff expands. They don't really mention that, but if I just put these pellets, these hot pellets, in a little bowl of water, you know, they'll just grow. They'll fill the whole bowl because these are very condensed. So there we go. Whew. Did you see how high that rose up, though? Man, it came all the way up to here. So yeah, you've got to stir. You've got to be ready. Got to be prepared to move this from heat if you have to, and keep your spray bottle right there. There's 1 bag. Here goes bag 2. We're probably going to get a similar, if not same, reaction here. So definitely emptied out. How we doing? Not bad. Looked like it was starting to foam up, but subsided. I'm going to keep stirring. And now we set our timer. So 60 minutes. This was a pretty easy recipe. A lot of times you're putting in hops at different intervals. Whoops. There we go. So we'll set that for an hour. And now we're just going to linger nearby, stir occasionally, and wait for the 60 minutes to hit. And as the timer counts down, you know, I'm not going to film me standing here stirring this for an hour. But when we get a little closer to the end of the process, we'll do some other things to get ready. So we'll just wait for now. Boiling along pretty well there. That is a rapid boil if ever I've seen it. See all that vapor escaping there? So there's always a certain amount of wort that you lose in the process. And that's because it turns into steam and goes right out, in my case, outside. While that boils, though, I guess there's some stuff we could do. Again, we can clean up our mess. I think I've done that pretty well. We could also put away some things we're not going to need. So we're done with our sanitizer. We're not going to need that anymore. The bottle caps and the priming sugar we can put up for a couple months. Not going to need those anytime soon. And now's a good time to actually take some of that sanitizer. We're going to pour some of that into this bucket. This is going to be our fermenting bucket. So let's just pour, you know, half gallon, 3/4 gallon, whatever, some of that into here to be shaken up. And that's just going to sanitize the bucket and get it ready for our wort to be poured into. Got my sanitizer in my bucket. Check to make sure my valve is in the off position so it doesn't come out of there. And then what I like to do is I just sort of grab the bucket with my thumb, plug that with one finger, and then I'm just going to turn the bucket upside down. Just jump up and down, stand on my head, whatever. I just want to shake this up and make sure that the sanitizer contacts every part of the inside of this bucket. And, you know, you got to do that for, they say, 3 to 5 minutes. So I start now and I just shake it every once in a while because there's really nothing else to do. We're just sort of waiting I'll stir that occasionally to make sure everything's coming off the bottom, not getting scorched. But it actually maintains itself really well at this point. Once you got that rapid boil going, you're just playing the waiting game. Sometimes you'll get a head starting to form. I'll stir that back in, make sure it's not going to try to bubble or boil over on me. So it just needs a little bit of babysitting. You just sort of helicopter around, check on it, make sure it's not rising up on you. But otherwise, it just sort of drives itself now for the duration of the hour. A little less than a half hour going left on our boil here, folks. I've turned down the heat a little bit because this boil is going real strong, and that's a good rapid boil. You may have wondered why boil for an hour. Some of that's history. It's always been done that way. But the primary reason we boil stuff for an hour is because nothing is going to survive that. You know, sometimes they call it cooking the bugs out or boiling the bugs out. So you're basically trying to get all the bacteria out of there that would cause a negative or impactful flavor on our beer. So yeah, turn that down a little too much. I still want a good boil. It's not so strong that I'm losing all my beer out the top. There we go. That's good. While that's running, I eventually got to hook up this wort chiller. So I can start doing that now. The wort chillers usually come with an extra rubber washer, and there's one inside of there, and then they come with this little attachment. Sometimes that's an extra $1, but most faucets have that NPT fitting that these fit right into. So we're just going to kind of unscrew the old one, and you can see how easy it was to take that out. It's because I never really twist that in too tightly. I want to be able to pop this in and out as I need to. So just going to unscrew that, set this up here where I won't knock it down, and you gotta be careful with this. Don't tighten too tight with your fingies because that's sharp. Those stainless fittings are. I usually take a rag and kind of give it just a loose tightening. And then be cautious when you turn the water on with this attached, because without the softener, the water just sort of goes everywhere. So make sure that you're practically done using your sink. So that's why I've already kind of cleaned up everything I need to and put it away. I've got this guy standing by. I'll use him towards the end of the process. And yeah, I can go ahead and hook this guy up. I used to sanitize this because I found it kind of strange that nobody ever told you to sanitize your wort chiller, even though you're going to dip this right into the wort. But yeah, the reason for that is it's still boiling. You know, we're going to take this from a boil, we're going to come and drop it in the sink, and we're going to drop this guy right into there. So he'll become sanitized real quick. So just kind of getting my pipes and my tubes ready here. Another little trick I like to pull is I'll get this guy pulled out over here. One end attaches here, the water is going to flow straight through there, down through the coil, and out the other side. And this just goes straight down the drain, unless you have a need to retain that water for gardening or whatever. But I like to take a rag and I kind of tie it in a loose knot around that tube, because this, once the pressure hits this, it has a tendency to jump out, and then you're just spraying water everywhere. So I like to kind of tie the rag in just a loose knot, and then I can kind of keep it down in the drain just like that, and then it's not going to hop out on me when I least expect it. So that's arranged pretty well. So when the time comes, I'll drop my kettle in there and drop this right in, and I'm going to do it in a way that I don't lose my spoon. So, you know, you notice we haven't sanitized our spoon, we haven't needed to, and one of the reasons is it's hitting our boiling water, you know, every 5 to 10 minutes that I do this. So when it comes time to move this kettle into the sink, I'll drop my spoon and I'll just leave it in there and carry it on over there with the spoon inside the kettle there. But for now, I'm just going to stir and put it up there. Leave it just like so. You can see how sticky that's getting? It just wants to stay there now. It's kind of nice. It's like magnetic goop. Another thing we should have ready is ice. So I'm going to get an ice tray out and I'll just set it right there when I get a little closer to the last 5-10 minutes or so. But I've already checked the freezer and make sure I'm making ice, and I'm going to have plenty of it. So yeah, still a waiting game now. And just remember to shake this every once in a while. Got my lid nice and tight. It still has sanitizer in it. And just before we finish the brew, I'll dump the sanitizer out of here and back into my bottling bucket. But right now it's doing what it's supposed to do. So more waiting, more stirring. About 15 minutes left there, folks. Let's take this time now to talk about the hydrometer. This is a big plastic tube with nothing in it. This usually comes with your hydrometer, or you can get it for a couple dollars. Don't spend more than a couple dollars, because this is just a plastic tube with a base. So the idea is, once you finish your wort, you take a sample of it, fill it to about yay, and then you're going to drop your hydrometer into it. I've been letting this guy sit around in sanitizer. So what we'll do is we'll put our hydrometer in there, and it's going to kind of bounce around, and it's going to level off, and then we're going to take a reading. So, it'll be like right around there somewhere, and this guy will sort of be sitting and floating around on top of that. So there's marks going down this, and this does merit explanation. See how it says beer at the very top there? 1.000. And it says beer from here to about here. So you can kind of go by these marks, but if you want to be scientific about this, you're trying to hit your original gravity. So there's actually a couple different ways we measure this. There's starting gravity, which is water. Water always starts the same gravity. There's original gravity. That's where your wort starts. And then when it's done, and that is, it's produced alcohol, we hope, there's final gravity. And there's just a little formula that we're actually going to use to calculate our percentile of alcohol. So there's actually some marks on this, if you look around the sides of it, where it says ABV. And it's a little deceptive. This is not necessarily, yeah, there we go. You can't really rely on that. I wouldn't pay much attention to it. I think in winemaking that might be a little more useful, but we have a mathematical formula that's 100% accurate. We'll use that. The other thing I want to mention about these, and how I screwed this up when I was new to brewing, is those little marks in between, 10, 20, 30, 40. Those are, there's 5 marks between 20 and 30. So in other words, each one of those marks is actually 2 points. So my readings were way off. I couldn't figure out why. I was dumb and I wasn't reading this properly. So, if it lands, 1 mark below 10, that would be 12, not 11. So each one of those little hash marks is 2 points. So good to know. So anyhow, the other thing about these is the idea is you'll fill this with wort, you'll get your reading, and then you'll just dump it out, because we don't want to infect our wort. There might be some bacteria in this because I'm not sanitizing it. So that's one way to do it. The way I like to do it is I'll actually put sanitizer in this. I'm going to stick my hydrometer in there, and it's going to want to float on top of the sanitizer. And I want to keep the thing submerged. So I'll put a glass or something with a little bit of weight on top of that. And this is a glass instrument. We've got to be careful with it. But I'll put something over there to kind of weight it and hold it down in there. And basically just hold it under the sanitizer and get it sanitized. And then I can pour that sanitizer back into my bucket, and I can take this straight out, and I'm going to drop it right on top of my finished product to get my reading. That way I don't have to take a sample, I don't have to waste or dump out, That's only about half a beer's worth, but I want to keep all the beer I possibly can, so I don't want to dump anything out. So, a little different way of doing it, but I've seen other people do that too. They just drop the hydrometer right into their product to get their readings. Another good time to mention that there is a script for this process. Flip that back over here. So the next thing we're going to actually do in this process is our cool and wort transfer. So we have to get this from a boil, and buddy, is it boiling. So 10 minutes left on the clock there. So we got to take this from a boil down to what they call pitching temperature. That is to where your yeast will survive and be active. If we dropped our yeast into boiling water, we'd kill it. and we'd have the worst beer ever. So we're actually going to cool that down. We're going to add water, because this is only about 2 gallons at this point, maybe a little less. And we're trying to make 5 gallons of beer. So we're just going to add fresh water to that. And then we're going to pitch yeast. We're just going to throw yeast in there. We're going to stir it up. Notice I say do not hydrate or rehydrate your yeast. So this comes with a dry packet. Some people like to switch that out with a liquid packet of yeast, maybe something a little higher quality. I found the dry yeast works fine if used properly. So, but yeah, you should stir it. Always stir your yeast in. Sometimes they say you can just pitch it, throw it right on top, and leave it there, and let the yeast cycle itself. But don't do that. I've found that it causes a head to form at the top of your bucket, and if that head rises high enough, you're going to get all sorts of hop fragments stuck in your bubbler. It'll clog your bubbler, and then your bucket's going to overflow or bust open, and it's going to be a sticky mess. So yeah, we'll do that part next. Notice there's a bottling day on here. That'll be the way end of the process. We don't know when we can bottle it yet because we haven't taken our readings. So, but yeah, this is what I really want to show you. Is on the back there's a little alcohol by volume calculator. So we're gonna want to get our hydrometer out and take a reading when we're all done, so that we can have our original gravity. And then at the end of the process, in a couple weeks, couple months, however long you have to wait for your alcohol to hit, you'll take another reading the same way with this little instrument. And it's really playing a game of differences. You're going to start at original gravity, you're going to hit a final gravity, you're going to subtract that number from this number, and you're going to get a positive number. It's going to be 0.0 something something. So we'll multiply that number by 131.25, and that's going to tell us the alcohol by volume percentage. So there's other ways of measuring this. I found this to be really accurate. You can actually buy a little electronic device called a refractometer, where you just have to put 1 drop of your finished product on there, and it just gives you an instant reading. Used to be those were hundreds, thousands of dollars. They were scientific lab instruments, but now they're making them in for home brewers, and they can get them down to about $50 or so. So it might be worth investing in, but again, I found this old method still works really well, so I stick with it. So we're almost there. 7 minutes now I've been gabbing. I'm going to stir this back in. Sometimes I come up and I pour some of this down the sides. I'm just trying to get some of that hardened hop fragments down. Get it mixed back in there. Stir it around again. So now it's about time when I get my ice out. I'll get my ice ready. I'll lay it right here. Try to clear this out. Oh yeah, I got to get that sanitized. I'll do that. Then I'll get my ice out, and then I'll be ready to do the next step here. All right, folks. Got my camera perched in a strange position here. I'm trying to give you the best vantage point, and I'm going to try not to drop my phone onto the floor in this process. Working without a tripod, folks. So this next step, we got to get the wort off the stove and into here. So I need both hands. You're going to hear the timer going, and then it's going to be a mad dash to get it in here. While that happens, I'm going to plug the sink, tie my knot around this hose again. I've been using my rag to clean up. And I might actually get some cold water going in here. Just going to fill the bottom. Get about 1 inch or 2 of water down there. And I'm going to put some ice in there too. Got a big tray ice. There we go. And the kettle's going to sit right on top of that. I got this guy ready to go. He's going to get put in immediately, as is this. So, get my pot holders out here. Just going to stir it one last time. Alright, timer is going. Can finally turn that fan off. Turn that timer off. I'm going to carry my bucket over here. Notice I got the handle, or I dropped my big spoon right into there, right off the handle. And then this guy, I've got to kind of creep around the handle and get it down in there.
Make sure that all my tubes are out of the way and they're not going to pop out on me. And then I'm just going to start running cold water through there. Boosh. So if I feel this, it is super hot. Hot to the touch. Oh yeah, I forgot. Got to drop this in there too. And the reason we do all this quickly is we got to keep it sanitized. So now I can dump some more ice in there. Keep a couple cubes. Back in the freezer. Alright, and now I stir. And this started at just over 200 degrees. The rapid boil is going to be around 208 degrees or so. Now, as soon as I can grab onto this, I could use this side. This is the cold side, and this is the now warm side. But as soon as I can grab a hold of this, I do. And I usually do a little jiggle as I stir. And that temperature's already dropped to 150, so it just rapidly drops. And you might stick your hands in there, kind of move the ice around. You can actually grab the handles and do one of these. We're just moving the wort around, getting it chilling. Alright, we've already dropped down to 125, so that temperature is dropping. We want to get it down to around 72 degrees. What they call yeast pitching temperature. Alright, approaching about 105 now. Notice I got my cold water running through here this entire time. So, yeah, it's a huge waste of water, but also, not everybody can get away with this trick. Might be worth mentioning, if you live in a hot, dry environment, your water might come out of the faucet at 80 degrees. I've heard that happening in places. So, obviously, you're going to need a different cooling system. I'm in Ohio. My water comes out around 60 degrees all year round, so handy. I'm just stirring, jumping this thing around, just trying to make some motion. And it's working. I'm down to about 80 or so. Definitely don't need these anymore, so I'm going to put those away. Oh yeah, I left the heat running that entire time. Nice. Alright. We're just about there. We're about 75. So I'm going to pull that out. I'm going to turn this off. Stop blowing water down the drain. I'm going to pull the plug out. I'm going to remove my rack. Might use that. And probably a good time to unscrew this and kind of get it out of your way. These things are really a pain in the butt to deal with when you're done brewing. So we're done with this for now. We're not going to use that again. We're definitely done with the wort chiller for now. And right now it's just going to be a sticky mess. So I'm going to throw it over there. Oops, I'm going to use my sprayer. I'm just going to give it a quick bath. All sorts of funk stuck to that right now, so I'm just going to try to spray all that off. I'll give it a better cleaning later. But yeah, you don't let that sit on there. It just turns into a gooky mess. Yeah, there's other ways to chill your beer. There's what's called a counter chiller, where you're actually running your wort through cold water. So we would actually have a hose inside this hose that your wort would transfer through. That's kind of cool. But those have some disadvantages, and that is that hop fragments and other stuff get stuck in there, and they can become really nasty, if you don't clean them properly. So with this kind of chiller, we're not running the wort through there, we're just running water through there. So we don't have to worry about this getting gross and infected. So handy. So there we go. We've got chilled wort, but not nearly enough. So the next thing we're going to do is get this into a bucket, the bucket that we've been sanitizing, And then we're going to need to top it off. We're going to add the cold water, or not cold water, warm water, because remember we're trying to maintain 72 degrees or so. We're going to get that up to 5 gallons. Okay, so I've been shaking this around, trying to dump that sanitizer out. And actually these buckets are great because I've got this handle, and I can actually take that handle, kind of lock it into the ribs of the other bucket, and just let it stand there on its own accord. I'm not going to touch the inside of this now. I'm going to handle it carefully from the edges. I'm going to place it upside down on the counter because that is now sanitized. Anything we do from here on out, everything's got to be very well sanitized. So I mentioned before, the sanitizer isn't going to hurt you or make anything taste funny, but we try to get as much as we can out of there. Sometimes the wort comes in contact with it and it actually foams up, and you know that might kind of turn you off. But there's an old saying that I've heard used many times, and that's "Don't fear the foam." You really don't need to worry about it. So, all right, so that's enough. That thing's just about dry inside, and we're going to dump this into here. And again, my spoon's been with me this whole time. I'm going to take it out and put it right in the bucket. Not going to wash that yet. It's still safe to use at this point. At this point, sometimes folks will run a screen. They'll try to get some of those hop fragments out, and I commend them for that because you do run a risk keeping all the little flakes of grain and hop pellet stuff. The risk is that that's going to get into the foam, rise to the top, and you have a chance of plugging up your bubbler, your airlock. So, pretty dirty. I don't know if you can see that from that angle, but yeah, that's going to be a sticky mess for us to clean up. Put that in the sink for now. And I think I mentioned we're done with this. I guess I'm not entirely done with it because what I like to do is run this under tap water, and I just play with the temperature. I want to get it around 70 degrees coming out of the faucet, and that's what I'm going to add into there. Oh yeah, before my faucet's actually useful again, I've got to take this out. There's my sticky pot over there. Ew. I got to take this little attachment out and put this guy back in. Make sure the washer's still in place. It is. If that ain't in there, it's going to be, yeah, it's going to be a mess trying to spray water out of this. Alright, so I'm going to put that around the middle. Get a solid beam of water running out of there. And I'm going to test it. I'll check my temp. How am I doing? Not bad. About right. Now the water's starting to heat up, so be careful that's not going to jump up on me. Yeah, see, look at that. We're going up towards 80 degrees. I need to cool off a little bit. This is important because, again, if it's too hot when we add our yeast, we can actually damage or kill our yeast. We don't want to do that. And we're just going to add this straight into our bucket. That's this guy. So here's my finished product. Nice and foamy. Alright, let me move my rag out of my way here. I'm going to actually drop my bucket into the sink. And obviously my faucet isn't high enough to get in there. This is when we switch off to the sprayer. Boom. Love the sprayer. Clean the sides of the bucket down a minute, huh? Alright. I've seen people do some pretty crazy things to aerate your wort. You know, the wort, or the yeast does need oxygen to flourish. And since we're going to seal this sucker off, we're kind of trying to put oxygen into the wort for it to breathe on and thrive on. So they call this aerating the wort, and this is how I do it with the sprayer. Problem with doing this is I'm actually going to make it really hard to get a reading with my instrument because I plan on dropping my instrument in there too. So I'm going to start going down the side of the bucket. But, you know, other ways to aerate your wort is you put a lid on it and you just shake it all around. shake it for like 5-10 minutes until it's really sudsy inside. So we're trying to hit 5 gallons. So there's my marker. And now the foam is going to rise slightly higher than the 5-gallon mark. So I could get this, a ½ inch above, and I think I'd be pretty good there. Just because once the foam settles, But I like to get it right to the foam, especially with a dark Russian Imperial Stout like this. I get it right there, and I stop. And it's actually going to settle a little lower than 5 gallons, and that's okay. Like the end result of that is what? Slightly stronger beer. And that's more than okay, especially with this variety. You want it dark and strong and flavorful. So, remember that we added all that water. And right now that water's sitting on top. So, I'm going to do kind of this motion. I'm trying to bring the wort to the surface and then just sort of stir everything together. This was another one of those that I would take when I first got into this home brewing stuff, I would immediately take a reading after adding the water. And I found that I was always way low, very low. And so I'd be disappointed. I think I did something wrong. And then the beer generally tasted okay and turned out all right. But it was just, I wasn't stirring the water. If you stir the wort and the water together, then you get a real reading. Yeah, see how foamy that is? And some of that is actually just because it came into contact with the sanitizer, which again, that's okay. But most of those bubbles are because I sprayed it with a sprayer. And you may say, well, you didn't have to do that. No, I didn't. But again, you want to aerate your wort. And I still feel that's the best way to do it, is just spray water really hard, make bubbles. All right, so at this point, I can get that out of the sink and up here. I might let it sit a moment. I'll put the lid on it, which is still sanitized, upside down there. I'll lay that down on top to kind of cover it up and keep my wort safe from bacteria. And I'm just going to let that settle down for a couple minutes. So lid on top. Notice I haven't removed that yet. Not yet. Just going to sort of rest that on there with my handle intact. And while those bubbles settle, I'm going to check this guy out. I got my hydrometer ready, right? And right now this is just sitting in sanitizer, which, the starting gravity is what we call that. It's just plain water. So if ever you want to see what tap water is, tap water should always read 1.0. And it just about does. Yeah, it's got sanitizer in there, of course, but that's a way you could calibrate this, is to just fill this thing up with water and dump it in there, and it should be 1.0. And it is. It's right on the money. So I'm going to put that back on top, just to kind of hold her back down in there and keep her sanitized. And this is a great time to clean up this sticky mess. So I'll spare you those details. But yeah, I generally try to use a rag. If you have to use a scrubber, don't scrub this with steel wool, because you'll kind of tear up your lining there. I shouldn't call it a lining. This is just solid stainless steel, but you will scratch it and make it look lousy. And then stuff's going to get stuck in those crevices. So don't use something abrasive. This is like one of those, El Cheapo Scotch pads. It's supposed to be scratchless. Even this is actually a little too abrasive, so try to use a sponge side. I try not to make scratches if I can help it. So yeah, we'll clean that up while we wait for that to happen. Okay, so I took a break there and I cleaned things out and got my kettle turned upside down. Love these dry mats. This dish drying mat, but it's huge. These are great for brew day because I can lay that thing out on a counter and I can turn everything upside down on it, including my bottling bucket when I'm done with it. And I can dry everything on that thing. They're great. And you can just throw them in the washing machine, which is really cool. So let's see how it looks. See how our foam is subsiding. And again, turning this upside down carefully. Don't touch the inside. Oh, look at that. That's beautiful. Look at these clouds that form on top. So you can actually scoop that out and dump it. I might be losing a little bit of work that way, but that's okay. I'm basically just going to clear a path, and then I can drop my hydrometer right in there and get a reading. All right, I've cleared the head off pretty good there. Look at all the stuff I threw out. Yeah, that's a lot of, wow. All right, so I'm going to pull the top off of this.
I'm going to handle this as little as possible because this toppy part is not sanitized, and I'm going to gently drop it in there. All right, and it's going to try to bounce around on me a little bit. And this can be a little maddening because it always wants to go right into the foamy parts. It's hard to get it to cooperate. You don't want bubbles sticking to this because the bubbles will help it rise, and then you're going to get a wholly inaccurate reading. So you want to try to shake the bubbles off, get it down in there. This is probably why you're supposed to use this little tube that I just use as a sanitizer for my instrument. So it's kind of hard to see there. Seems so far away. It's about 1.080. So from this angle, if you're looking at the hydrometer, it looks like 80. I'll show you how we represent those numbers here, but let me just tinker with it a little more. Try to get it out of Bubbles' way there. See if it still floats to the same point there. Yeah, it's almost 1.082. Yeah, maybe 1.081. So it's not quite to the next hash mark, which would be 82, but pretty close. Yeah, I'd say that's 8.1. So notice this says, I'll take it out of here so I don't affect my wort here, but the marks as they go down the side there, it starts at 1.000. And so this is 1.0, and then down the scale there we hit 8.1. 1.081. That is really good. Now I did cheat a little bit, and here I'm going to throw that into the sanitizer just to clean it off a little bit. I cheated. It's hard to tell in this lighting, but my wort stops right there. I'm like 4¼ gallons, so I really should have added about another 3/4 gallons of water. And at this point I could. You know, I've hit my mark by, you know, for certain there, so I could add more water. But if you want a stronger beer with slightly higher alcohol and a lot of full body to it, then don't add the full amount of water. No science there. So if we come back over to our instruction sheet here, flip back to the first page, there is a target to hit. So it's going to be somewhere between 1.076, which would be low. You know, if it's under that, then you messed up. You know, if you hit a number lower than your original gravity, it's probably because you didn't get all the stuff out of the can. You didn't get enough stuff out of the dry malt extract bags. Maybe you just added too much water, but you got to at least hit that or your beer is just not going to taste great. It's going to taste weak. We hit 1.081 roughly, which is the high mark. You know, this is what you strive for. If you hit that, you're going to get the highest amount of alcohol out of your beer too. So we're trying to get between 7¾ to 8¼ % ABV. That's alcohol by volume. So at this reading, we should get the full amount. We certainly hope so. So that's good. And I'm going to write that right in there, 1.081, so that when I come back weeks or months from now, when it's bottling day, I'll take a second reading, and I'm going to have something to compare that to. If you forget to do this or you skip this step, that's fine. We'll just presume that it's good beer. You know, you don't have to have a hydrometer. You don't have to do this step. But this is kind of part of the science that I think makes brewing fun. So last step will be to add the yeast. So if you remember back in the beginning of the video, one of the first things we did after getting our sanitizer ready was we threw a bubbler in there. And we threw our yeast in there. We later threw the scissors in there. So the reason is the scissors are going to come in contact possibly with your yeast, but definitely come in contact with the packet when we cut it. So, you know, you don't want to cut this open with your teeth. You will definitely insert bacteria when you do that. So at this point, everything's got to be sanitized. I'm going to hold the packet like so. It's kind of fattened out at the bottom where all the yeast is squished together. So I'm going to hold it like so, and I'm going to cut across the top. In goes the yeast. Did I get it all out? Nope. There's a big lump in there. Oh, there it goes. Now I got it. Yeah, there's just a tiny bit left. Get out of there. Yeah. All right. So, the yeast has been pitched, and it just sits right on top. Now, some people put the lid on and call it a day, and I suppose that's acceptable. I always stir it in, and one of the reasons I've learned to do that is if we don't stir it in, then the reaction is going to happen all on the surface, and that's where you run the risk of rising up to the lid level and clogging up your airlock. We don't want to do that. So I'm going to stir that real well with my spoon that has been inserted this entire time. So this is a gentle motion. I don't know that the yeast really cares or it's that sensitive, but they always say, you know, gently stir the yeast in. And I'm going to obey those orders. I don't want to do anything to damage it. This yeast is our friend. It's going to be the alcohol producer. It's the worker bees of the whole process, so we want to be careful with it. Make sure we don't hurt it. And I'm just going to the bottom and kind of bringing the wort back to the surface. You know, you don't really have to worry about yeast settling. When the yeast runs out of sugars, it will eventually settle, and it just sort of becomes a cake at the bottom of your fermenting bucket, and that's okay. That's part of the process. It's fun to watch too. You know, some of these buckets are actually translucent, like our bottling bucket is, but they say that's not good for the yeast. You know, you're trying to avoid sunlight. So, like the glass carboys, which are obviously completely translucent. Usually you throw a towel over that. So if you went with a glass carboy instead of a plastic bucket, just make sure you shield it from sunlight. Alright, that's pretty well stirred. I feel happy about that. And now we're going to immediately seal this up and pop the lid on. This is probably easier to do on the floor, so I've actually lowered the bucket down, and I'm just going to force my hands around with a lot of pressure, and you should get a nice pop, and that tells you that well, your lid is on tightly and securely. Got to be sealed very well. So notice this is in the off position. That's good. Now most bottling buckets don't have that. You know, again, that's my silly addition. But this is where my bubbler is going to go, and I'm not going to put the bubbler in yet. I'm actually going to carry this bucket to its final destination, and then I'll add the bubbler so that I don't jostle it around on the way there. Alright, we got our beer in its final destination. I have labeled it. We're calling this McMarathon, and that's just a play on words with a local legend out here. So I'm ready to put in my bubbler. That's this guy. This is my bubbler airlock. There's little marks there that tell you the minimum amount or maximum amount of sanitizer to put in there. And I haven't touched the bottom part because that's actually going to go right there. And that could come in contact with our beer. So you really want to get it in there good. As you push down on this, you're going to see the levels popping around. And that's good because it means our bucket's sealed. It's bad because if you push it in too hard too fast, this liquid's going to bubble over and fall down into your bucket. And remember, it doesn't affect the taste of your beer, but it will affect not having a working airlock. So this is a good time to use this little thing. This will let air in and out, which we won't normally want, but for this part of the process, it allows me to put a little pressure on that with no concern of losing all my water inside. So this is nice, like an air release. So I'm going to turn that back to off for a moment. And if I kind of push up and down, you see those, look at that, I can play like teeter-totter. That's good, it means we got a good seal. Some of these old northern brewing buckets, we have, yes, 6 different fermentations in progress now. Problem with home brewing is you get hooked really, really easy. So this is one that we actually brewed yesterday. And I expected that it would be a heavy fermentation, and I didn't want to run the risk of blowing my airlock. It's actually done really well. It has not really pushed the envelope. So I'm actually going to turn this back to the off position, and I can kind of push up and down on there. I'll see it jump around, right? So it's still sealed very well. And then I'm just going to slide that off. I'm going to move that over to this guy. So, and this is just sanitizer. So just glass vase of sanitizer solution.
Yeah, I didn't really plan this real well because now my handle's in the wrong position. Slide it, kind of do a 360 here. I like using my handle to keep this hose from jumping around. So pop that on there. Give it a good shove. Flip that onto the on position. And I'm just going to run the tube right down through here and into my solution. And yeah, sometimes it's hard to get the hose to cooperate with you. This is cheap, really cheap plastic hose that I'm using. There's certainly better stuff. There's a food grade silicone, which is far better to use, and you don't have this problem where it just doesn't want to stay where you put it. It's very soft and flexible. But yeah, you'll pay a little more for that. I guess the good stuff about this tubing is when it gets kind of gross or you feel like it's going to be tough to clean, you just throw it, you just pitch it. It's cheap stuff. So there we go. We are now ready to ferment. And we have some other fermentations in progress. This guy's not really hopping around. He was yesterday. This guy, I actually did a transfer. This is a Russian Imperial that we moved from one bucket to another. This was actually brewed way back on the 4th of last month. So yeah, he's done some time in this bucket. And every once in a while you're going to see that bubbler pop up and down, which just means you got some CO2 escaping. It's yeah, there it goes, just hopped. So that's kind of fun. It had stopped. It had come to a complete stop. But we did a secondary transfer or secondary fermentation, which basically just means you move it from one bucket to another bucket, being very careful to sanitize everything all over again. But when you do that, you turn the wort upside down. So oftentimes you'll see that the process by which yeast converts the sugars into alcohol, it starts back up again. And that certainly happened here. You turn it on its head, you get it moving, it goes back to work. So pretty cool. So that's about it. Now we just sort of leave it in this temperature controlled room. And you want to keep your temperatures, check the recipes. They'll tell you what your temperature should be for that variety. In this case, we have about 2 to 3 different varieties of beer being processed or worked on here. So I tend to keep it around 70-ish degrees, like 71.5 degrees is kind of my mark. 72 is pretty much perfect for most of these varieties for yeast production. But that's it. We just wait. This is a very heavy gravity beer that we just brewed. So we shouldn't expect it to be done for at least 3 to 4 weeks. I've found that the alcohol production continues well beyond 4 weeks for that type of beer. So I like to leave it several months, 3 to 4 months. If you can stand waiting that long, it is fantastic tasting beer. Right up there on par with some of the more expensive craft beers that are bottled and professionally manufactured out there. So that's it. Now we wait. So check out our other videos. We have one on bottling. We'll come back and bottle this in a few months. But if you want to know what the bottle, what would come next, check out our bottling video. So that's about it for now, folks. Thank you for watching.